Hello and welcome to Brett's blog. My name's Brett and I'd like to welcome you back if you've been following this short foundational series that I've uploaded as an introduction to my story, 825 Days, which I'll be getting into here in a couple of weeks when I finish the next series, which is about to begin shortly. I've identified this series in several different ways, and that's not been an error. It's because there are many different aspects to America's criminal justice system, and so I've identified this series as kind of a law foundation. I've called it a criminal justice series, a prison industrial complex series. Those are all accurate in context, and so my goal was to lay this foundation or a base, the welcome and the thank you post, which was first. These four videos, this is the fourth and final video in this overview of America's criminal justice system, which we've learned that we prefer to identify as America's prison industrial complex. And then I've given you a couple of posts introducing you to the various law enforcement agencies, including both deputized law enforcement staff and free non-deputized admin support and other staff. And I'm concluding with this post, which is directly to the Marin County Sheriff and the Marin County deputies who I was in custody with and who handled the court here, the bailiff staff who handled the court hearings, and just all of the people in that local chapter of America's prison industrial complex in Marin County. Let me note here that I'm a very private person. I'm less private than I ever used to be, having my life ripped apart, and it actually feels good being less private. But I still have great private concerns, and I'm also a respecter of other people's privacy. I have been my whole life. That's just the way I roll, I guess. But and I'm going to get to this later in detail when I finish this foundational series. In fact, the very final post that I have ready, which will conclude this foundation introduction, talks about this. But this is out of my comfort zone. I don't like sitting in front of the camera. I don't like that I have to tell this story. I feel obligated to tell this story. I feel it's a service to the local Marin community, to the greater California and Western United States, and even to the larger American community, and even the world community to lesser degrees, for sure. But I feel obligated to do this. I don't like doing this, and I would prefer that the people in Marin County did not put me in the position where I felt obligated to do this. So let me say with that I think I earned the right to do this. They put me through hell. They wrongfully accused me of a crime that never happened, and they tried to destroy my life and succeeded in many ways. Investigated me for years, ripped my personal and professional life apart, stole me out of a foreign country on bogus accusations, and then wrongfully imprisoned me for 825 days before finally being acquitted and going free. It's very expensive to be free in America, but nonetheless. And so going through that and coming out the other side, I feel like I've earned the right to tell this story. Aside from my First Amendment right to freedom of speech, and in addition to my right as an American to have an opinion about things, which a personal memoir, in addition to the voluminous facts that mine includes, which are based on many California public records and other verifiable documents. But at the end of the day, it's still my life and my opinion of my life, and the Supreme Court has ruled repeatedly that Americans have that right to freedom of speech and have a right to an opinion. And then there have been numerous Supreme Court cases, such as Larry Flint v. Jerry Falwell and New York Times v. Sullivan, that have, again, reinforced the right that people can tell their story and be protected to tell their story. So while I'd prefer that I wasn't in a position to have to do this, and noting that I feel obligated to do it, I also feel that I have a constitutional right to do it, a Supreme Court reinforced right to do it, and because of what happened to me, I feel like I've earned the damn right to do it. So I'm here trying to help the community. Well, it's therapeutic for me, for one, but I'm also trying to help. I'm trying to give information and education, and I'm also trying to make it entertaining. The problem that concerns me is that I know that there are at least a small group of people in Marin County that are slithering off to their little secret places and are terribly worried about what's to come next. And so let me say that the only people that I plan to talk about, and the only people in my book that I talk about, are the people that are integral to me communicating the travesty of justice that happened to me. This is not a big splattering. There are a number of people involved, but really if you lined up all the people on a board, it's not that many people. You know, it's a fairly small population. It's certainly not Marin County wide. Marin County is a beautiful place. It's a place that does a lot of good in the world, and I when I accidentally only say Marin County, I'm talking about this very small population of base, unethical, lying, perjurous scumbags who tried to kill me, frankly, and ruin my life for sure, and that's it. So I'm not going to be talking about personal relationships at all, and if this story gets any traction and those people choose to speak up, that's your business. What you do and say is your karma, and what I do and say is my karma. I'm not getting into any personal relationships in terms of my employees that I've had, other than the very few who need to be mentioned as a course of telling the story. I won't be talking about my employees. And for some of you in Marin County, in the central Marin County sewer community and county politics, who that you participated in a complete manipulation and travesty for your own communities, you tricked and lied your own communities. Most of you aren't going to be mentioned either. I don't care. That's your problem, and you've got to answer for that. And whether someone else chooses to shine the light on that, or whether you choose to be honest with your community about that, that's up to you. So I'm not just throwing people's names against the wall. What I plan to talk about and the people I plan to name and list are a very few, small, select group of manipulative people who felt that they had the right to ruin an agency and ruin a man's life and try to kill a man, in my opinion, for the selfish gain of power and influence and money. If you're in that group, yeah, by all means, be concerned, because this is Transparency Central. You use the word transparency for your own selfish agendas, but you don't believe in it. And this is transparent. But the transparency ends at the end of the usefulness of telling the truth in a very narrow capacity to help and educate and inform society. So anybody outside of that spectrum is not going to be named or talked about ever. Getting right into it then, segueing, that was a edgy segue, I know, but to conclude this foundational series on the criminal justice system, an overview, and then my experience with regards to the Marin County Sheriff and the deputies and the free staff and the medical staff and everybody else in the jail where I was held, and the court staff and the Honorable Kelly Simmons, my ultimate judge. I had several judges through the process. Let me just say that we're at peace. I have nothing, let me give a disclaimer and then I'll conclude. There are a very few of you who I came into contact with who wore badges and didn't. who have no business being in the law enforcement community and being responsible for inmates. But I don't think that's unique to Marin County by any stretch. And you know who you are and your peers know who you are. I will never say your names because that's not my place. And I don't want to stain what I ultimately think is the good name and the good service of the Marin County Sheriff and his deputies, which is the point of this post. So, but I did want to qualify that with, there are a couple of you that are out of line and you're scumbags and you have no business wearing a badge. And if you didn't have unions that protected you to the nuts, you'd be unemployed, and should be, or not should be unemployed, but shouldn't be employed in the honorable role that you're in. But that's enough of that. Okay, my experience with hundreds of people, I'm sure, was just a very few. But and your peers know who you are, and all the inmates know who you are. But moving quickly on, I had one occasion to meet the Marin County Sheriff briefly in the pod, and many occasions to meet the deputies and free staff. I lived there for 800 days. I saw men and women hired. I saw men and women retire. I saw men and women probably encouraged to move on. I don't know the circumstances. I saw men and women. I saw, I think some of them were combat veterans who were serving. Some of them were young and right out of school that were serving. And my overall impression, being in an extraordinarily difficult place, going through the trial of my life. When I say trial, I mean trials and tribulations, and then I also ultimately mean the trial, my trial. And my overall experience was just, positive would be too strong a word, or not the right word, but respectful, cordial, to the best of our ability. I feel like I was treated reasonably fair in the context of being wrongfully imprisoned. It wasn't your fault. You didn't cause me to be wrongfully imprisoned. You were responsible for me when I was wrongfully imprisoned. And I'm mature enough to distinguish between the two. So to the men and women who were responsible for my custody, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. What I observed from you were professionals who were doing a hard job, who in a majority of grossly difficult situations did a good job, at least a fair job. And I feel this tinge to be clear about this. I could nitpick and I could pull out a couple of more than a couple of incidents. But I think my initial qualification about those few bad apples covers that, and when we set that aside, I'm talking about the body of deputies, sergeants, people that were responsible for making decisions, and the people that did things, the men and women that came in and watched the pod, who we were involved with daily for hours and hours. You should be pretty proud of yourselves, I think. And I know you don't hear that a lot, in particular from people who've been inmates or who have been incarcerated. And it's not easy to say, frankly. There's a natural bitterness that just wants to creep up and take hold, and that bitterness can ruin a person's life. And I don't want my soul ruined with that. I've crossed that. I crossed that bridge when I was there. And I think for those of you that might get an opportunity to see this, I don't know if you will or not. I certainly hope some of you will. In fact, I think if some of you do, then the rest of you probably will. For those of you, men and women, who I came into the most contact with, and I'll never name you. I don't think that would be fair. Probably not fair to me, and probably not fair to you. And when I say I will never name you, I mean I will never name you. It doesn't matter what pressure is ever placed in the future. It doesn't matter what opportunities might arise. It's just never going to happen. And I mean what I say and say what I mean. So As much as I'd like to pull out 10 or 20 of you and laugh and tell great stories of opportunities where there was levity and a little humanity inside, it's just those, I'm going to keep those in my heart, and I hope some of you will remember those too. But that being said, there were those occasions. You know, some of you made it as humane as possible. Some of you were as fair as possible. Some of you dealt with extraordinarily difficult situations with incredible integrity, despite being, in some cases, yelled at and treated horribly. Not by me. I never treated any of you that way, and I hope that would be your testimony as well. I know that's true, and I hope you would affirm that if you were asked, but that's up to you. But you know, I saw inmates treat you horribly, and in most cases, and by most I mean, you know, 99%, maybe higher than that, considering there were thousands of incidents. You guys held yourself high and honorably and did a great job. And that's a credit to your sheriff, who I didn't know. Like I said, I met one time briefly in the pod, and the support staff and the people surrounding you. So I wanted to conclude my law enforcement foundational posts. Again, there will be more as I get into the book, but not about you guys. I think in my book there are two examples, and one I think I used as more of levity. It was kind of funny, but I don't name the person. And I think in one or two other instances, I might cite one of the issues with one of the bad apples, whom I don't name in the book, and there might be a third instance. But hopefully this blog post qualifies that. I think I qualify it in the book. And that's it. That's all I have to say, that and this post. And I just want to say thank you. Thank you for responsibly keeping me in your custody. Thank you to my bailiff who went through trial with me. You know who you are, and I know who you are. And, you know, we had a couple of tense moments there in the back hallway as the trial was growing to a conclusion. But you were an amazing bailiff, and all of the men in the back hallways and women in the back hallways who transported me back and forth and saw me into the courtroom. The support staff in the courtroom, again, I'm not going to name you either, but I know who you are, you know who you are, and I really appreciate you. And from the bottom of my heart. And then finally, I wanted to conclude with a thank you to the Honorable Kelly Simmons. Again, you know, sister, you made some tough calls early in the trial, and I wasn't sure at that point what was going to happen. But I think, you know, your district attorney put you in a horrible position, and I think you handled yourself admirably with class and dignity. You know, you're a beautiful human, I think. And it was a very difficult situation, but as things went on, as the trial went on and then concluded, you know, I have nothing but respect for you, and I want to thank you for being my judge and doing a great job, and for helping me get through, you know, an American human's most horrible nightmare, and that's just all I'll ever have to say, you know, about that. You fall into the category of any of the people I just talked about. I'm at peace with you. I hope you're at peace with me. I respect you, and I appreciate the circumstances we went through together. You know, I actually grew from it, and I hope you did too, and I hope we don't ever have to do that again. And for the very few of you that I might have gotten to know a little better, you know, if we ever find ourselves in that nice restaurant with the long wooden bar over on the side, I'll be buying the first beer for sure. You know, I love you guys, a few of you, and I hope to see you again someday. And if not, be at peace. This is the last I have to say about it. And there's nothing further in my book, and I'll have no further comments. Okay? Thank you very much. Have a good day. And I'll be beginning my next series on truth and justice. And the truth in justice will be the final section of this foundational series.